people to avoid large gatherings and mask up indoors where the vaccination status of other people are unknown. And 6, other variants are still on the way. Even though the Delta variant is currently the most prominent strain of COVID-19 currently, the Lambda variant out of South America is still emerging. Health experts urge that if people want to get back to normal, a significant portion of the population needs to be vaccinated. So get your vaccines today, mask up, and stay safe.
As President Buhari signs the Petroleum Industry Act into law, the presidency says the president was being responsive to the yearning of the majority of Nigerians. Also, the president is set to announce the Act's implementation committee. And the governor, Aminu Bello Masari, has officially approved a resort to self-help and has asked his people to acquire weapons in defense against terror and banditry. This is Plus Politics. I am Mary Anna Cohn. President Muhammadu Buhari has signed the Petroleum Industry Act into law, and the presidency has defended the signing, saying he was being responsive to the yearning of majority of Nigerians. Meanwhile, the president will unveil an implementation committee for the Petroleum Industry Act report. The reports are stating that the committee may be chaired by either the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Mr. Timipre Silva, or someone with good knowledge of development economics. Well, joining us to discuss this is National Publicity Secretary PANDEF, Mr. Ken Robinson, and the Executive Director of Extra Step Initiative, Eugene Abels. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you so much, and good evening, Nigeria.
All right, yeah, Mr. Abels will be joining us as we go on. But let me start by looking at the fact that the president seemed to have bowed to pressure to sign this particular bill now, an act, into law. And of course, a committee is set to be announced against the kicking, against the 3% by host communities and other stakeholders. This bill has been signed into law. What message is this sending to host communities, especially those oil producing communities?
It's sad that the presidency said the president signed it in response to overwhelming desire by the majority of Nigerians. That's an insensitive majority that do not feel the impact of the industry operations affected by the Niger Delta people. So it was a sad day for the people of the Niger Delta. We're not talking about the political influenced Niger Deltans. We're talking about the ordinary people in the Niger Delta, the grandmothers, the young men, the women, the old men, the fishermen and the farmers, whose means of livelihood have been decimated and whose environment have been degraded. It is sad that Mr. President did not give regard to the overwhelming outcry and condemnation by the people that greeted that passage of the bill by the National Assembly. And as we have said earlier, it's a clear sign of disregard to the feelings and the aspirations and the sensibilities of the Niger Delta people. And so if Mr. President says he bowed to the pressure of Nigerians, of course, as I said earlier, it's the insensitive Nigerians, the Nigerian state that has taken the Niger Delta for granted for over 60 years, that do not care about the sufferings of our local people. And so it's very sad for us. And the Niger Delta people will continue to consult amongst ourselves and in the best ways respond to this, as we have called it, callous act by the Nigerian state.
One of the presidents has said that he signed this for the benefit of the majority of Nigerians. Now, of course, we know that Nigeria is not just about the oil-producing communities. We're known as a country that produces oil, whether we like it or not. Everybody benefits from this oil, and in our National Assembly, it's not just the host communities where we have these oil producing outfits that have a say. We have people from the north, we have people from the south and the central and the east. Everybody has a say. So maybe what Mr. President is saying is that it wasn't just it didn't just boil down to the members of the National Assembly representing the host communities. It had to be, a decision for the extended House. Now, don't forget also that the House of Representatives had voted for 5%, and of course the Senate voted for 3%. There was a joint committee that finally agreed. They had, met each other halfway and still agreed on the 3%. So maybe Mr. President's hands are tied and he can't solely make that decision. Don't you think so?
The president is the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And as PANDEF and other very patriotic organizations have always said, one of the greatest problems of this administration is nepotism. Before the Senate and the House of Reps, the National Assembly passed that bill, we are aware that some northern elites had meetings with the caucus of the National Assembly from the north. And the message was that protect the interests of the north. It's rather ridiculous that we should be talking about protecting the interests of a section. And that played out in the throwing up of the 30% of profit of NNPC Limited for oil exploration in the frontiers.
But it is politics. I mean, when you're lobbying, I mean, I think that was their own way of lobbying. And please, I'm not in any way holding brief for them, but of course I have to play the devil's advocate here. It is politics. People have to lobby for their interest, and I'm guessing that interest obviously came into play. And what the Northern Extraction or those representatives did was to also see how they could benefit from the PIB. So can you really blame these people for asking or trying to see if they could get something out of it and then finally getting it? Should one particular section of society be prioritized over the other? I'm just asking.
The presidency of this country, one of the requirements, one of the stipulations or conditions in the constitution of this country is that the presidency will administer the state of affairs in a fair, just, and equitable manner to all Nigerians. It's stated in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And the Niger Delta people, who produce about 80% of the resources of this country, for so many years have been badly treated. And what Mr. President has done, as we have said earlier, is a clear message to us, the Niger Delta people, that how we feel and what we say do not matter in the scheme of affairs of Nigeria. And so it's a message we have received. And not too far from today, the Niger Delta people will also send a message to Nigerians.
I'm curious as to what you mean by the president doesn't care about the people in the Niger Delta. I mean, it's not just, again, not just the choice of Mr. President. You had members of your different constituencies and senatorial districts on that floor. They could have also done a job of lobbying, just as those northern elites, lobbied to get their 30%. Why couldn't we get our people to also lobby? It's not just the Niger Delta communities that are on the floor of the National Assembly. You have people from the Southwest, you have people from the North Central, you have people from different parts of the country. Why couldn't we, from this part, also lobby for that kind of percentage? It looked more like we were hoping that, because the oil is taken from right under us, that, the president will obviously be signing the paper to favor us.
It's begging the issue when we say we should lobby for what is our own.
But why shouldn't you?
Listen, my sister, when cocoa was the mainstay, cocoa and groundnut were the mainstay of the nation's economy, did they lobby to get 50% derivation? Why must the Niger Delta can people be treated this way? And we are saying that enough is enough. Mr. President, in this regime, rejected bills that have been passed by the National Assembly, has withheld assent. And if the Niger Delta people have said, it's not just about the 3%. There is also a clause in that act now that says that the settler, the IOCs, will decide who becomes members of the board of trustees of that trust. This act is officially legalizing, making the Niger Delta host communities slaves to the IOCs, because they will direct, even as bad as the 3% is. And all those issues were highlighted during the public hearing for the bill, and asked that those sections should be amended. There is an aspect that they dropped, and that was that the IOCs could even decide to appoint somebody not indigenous to the communities to be in the board. So Mr. President is the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We expected that he should have listened to the cries and outcry and condemnations from the Niger Delta, from well-meaning Nigerians, people that have supported this country and sacrificed a lot for the unity and progress of this country for several years.
Again, could we have done better than what we have done? Because, again, I'm taking your words. You're saying, why should we be lobbying for something that belongs to us? But you're comparing the Cocoa era to 2021. And those were two different eras where it was two different systems of government. So again, we have to understand where we are now and how to deal with the situation in the now. So if we all folded our arms and hoped that government, and when I say we, I'm talking about the people in the Niger Delta, if you folded your arms and hoped that because this is your legacy, this is something that should automatically come to you or favor you, and it didn't work, and you saw the writing on the wall, shouldn't it have been an extra push for the people in the Niger Delta to liaise? I mean, we see the people, our members on the floor of the National Assembly liaise or come to terms with certain things or join forces when it has to do with their personal, things that favor them. So why couldn't we see our own members from the Niger Delta do the same in this instance? Because you keep talking about the simple man, the farmer, the fisherman. Maybe it probably would not bother the members of the National Assembly, and that's why they took that step. But the people in the Niger Delta, I have always seen press releases and people talking. I have seen Chief Clark speak. But has there been a push, other than just talking? Has there been a real push that could have made or forced Mr. President's hand to put a hold on this particular act now that it's being signed into law to be returned for some form of amendment? Because I didn't see that.
My sister, I'm aware, I'm conscious and aware of the fact that I'm on national television, so I will mind the words I will use, but I'm certain that efforts were made. We had our members who stood up to speak at the floor of the Senate and in the House of Representatives. Efforts were made. We are in a very precarious situation in this country. Don't forget, Senator Siraki Dixon stood up and spoke. Few days after that, his interventions at the floor of the Senate, he was invited by the EFCC over frivolous allegations. That is the country where we are in. Our people are being intimidated, being harassed.
So you think that he's being invited by the DSS had any connection with his statements on the floor of the Senate? Is that what you're saying?
That is how we perceive it. Because it was after those interventions at the Senate that he was invited. He has been in the Senate for long before then. So, and that is the situation our people are in. And you know the faulty electoral system. If they think that you're a strong voice in the Senate or House of Reps, in the next election, they will make you not to come back. That is the funny and very faulty system we operate in Nigeria. And to some extent, we don't blame those of our people who are there who have become voiceless, in spite of how bad they feel.
Interesting.
But we're encouraging them that you should stand firm. A time will come when we, the people, will decide who will represent us. And whether anybody likes it anywhere in Abuja or anywhere, you will represent us. That's the encouragement we are giving to them. And we'll strengthen it.
So now that this bill has been signed, let's just look at let's piece together some of the recommendations. We know that a committee would be asked to determine the assets and liabilities of the NNPC, which will be transferred to the NNPC Limited. We also know that the committee would be tasked with the responsibility of determining stranded or toxic assets and liabilities, which would be taken over by government. It has 12 months to finish its job. Now, what part of this act do you think at least benefits the people in the host communities? I'm not even going to go into, the problems that the host communities already have with the IOCs, including, the cleanup with Shell, Goni. And there are other, areas in the Niger Delta that have issues of oil spills that has affected, the livelihood of people. But looking at it from PANDEF's perspective, what are the things in that particular act that you think would be beneficial? Because we've talked about the things that you have a problem with. What are the things in the act that could be beneficial to the people in the Niger Delta?
And I don't want to join those who think that there is something to benefit from that document. One bad apple spoils the whole bunch.
So there's nothing.
Everything there is perfected to favoring a particular section of this country. Today we saw some items, I don't know how true it is, some news reports that the committee to supervise the implementation of this act is going to be headed by the coordinating person is the Secretary of the Petroleum Trust, Petroleum Technology Development Fund. Where is he from? So we are going to have a ceremonial head who could be the Minister of State Petroleum or any other person, and then we have the coordinating head of the team.
Well, according to the reports that we have, no one has really been named except for Timi Praise Silva, who we already know is the Minister of State for Petroleum. But the government has been tight-lipped as to who will be there. These are only speculations, so I would rather that we, thread with caution on this particular one.
So you're a news person, so I will take your comment on that, because something signed by Femi Adesina was forwarded to me a few moments ago, and it's based on that I'm making my comments. But if you say that is not true, I will take your position. But the truth is that there's a reason why there is a clamor for restructuring. There's a reason why the agitations for secession are increasing, and it's because people feel that they are not being treated as they should be treated. And it's very clear that a section of this country thinks that this country belongs to them, but that's not true. Nigeria belongs to all of us. And very soon, we'll make it clear that this country belongs to us, all of us, and the Niger Delta people are key stakeholders in Nigeria.
What is the grouse with that particular region of the country being given that 30% to, search for oil in the Chad? What exactly is your grasp with that? We can explore to see if we do have oil, even though, there are many people, experts who have said that, the lifespan of oil, is very short these days around the world. And that's why people are moving to, alternative sources of energy. But in the meantime, what's wrong with exploring? It's just an exploration. If they find something, well. If they don't, they'll give it up. But what's wrong with that?
I'm not an economist, but from my military economy, I could tell you that does not make economic sense. How much did Nigeria allocate to the exploration of oil in the Niger Delta? What did we spend? Oil business is a business. If people want to prospect for oil in any part of Nigeria, what Nigerian government should do is to create the enabling environment for businessmen and women, for investors to go and explore for oil. If they find oil, fine, it's a business. If they don't find, it's a loss. Nigeria spending 30% of its profit from a national company for exploration of oil is fraudulent, and it's unacceptable to the Niger Delta people. Meanwhile, you're giving us 3% of operating costs of IOCs. And we hear the group managing director of the NNPC say 3% will amount to about $500 million. What is $500 million to all the host communities in the Niger Delta in 1 year? If you break it down, it could even go down to $10,000 per community. What is $10,000? Is it what they give to their girlfriends or their loyalists for dinner or for breakfast? It's an insult to the Niger Delta people, and it remains unacceptable to us.
Well, let me go to the presidential spokesperson's message when pressmen were pressing him on why the president took the position that he took. Now, he said that the president's action was, he said the legislation was open to review and amendment. In other words, it's not a closed case. In other words, the people in the Niger Delta do still have an avenue to appeal to the consciences of maybe members of the National Assembly, maybe Mr. President, because of course but then he has assented to it. But they're saying it's open to review and amendments. He also said that he was also asked, by the way, that's Garba Shehu, why the president ignored the cries of the people in the Niger Delta and the majority of the people who were kicking against this percentage. And he said that, I'd like to quote him, he said that those who were faulting the law to follow the right channels to effect the right changes as the law was not set in stone. He said, and I quote, "The law is the making of all Nigerians and not the president alone. It is not cast in stone. It can be changed." So there seems to be a light at the end of the tunnel here for the people in the Niger Delta. It's not necessarily, like he said, cast in stone. So what is in the works for the people in the Niger Delta, and I'm talking about from PANDEF's perspective, to push? And I'm talking not just the people of PANDEF or CSOs. What about the governors of the different states in these Niger Delta regions who are the major holders or stakeholders in this oil business? And I'm talking about states like Rivers, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Delta. What are the governors doing, aside from everybody's attention being focused on the 2023 elections and the campaigns that are going to come up soon? What are your governors doing? Because these people also wield some form of power. What are they doing?
We can't speak for the governors, but the fact is that there is a need for a change in the political culture in the country. There is something fundamentally wrong with how we throw our people. Our electoral processes are faulty, and we are surprised that Mr. President and the National Assembly is not giving the same expediency and speed to the process of amending the electoral system to guarantee free, fair, and credible elections in the country, so that people can speak their mind, people can do what their people want them to do, because they know that if they don't do what their people want them to do and continue to do what some persons in Abuja or wherever want them to do, they could be voted out by their people, not through the processes of force by the government. We must understand these problems because they exist. We have seen where state force have been used to make people lose elections. We have seen Supreme Court giving judgment for people to become governors. These processes have to change, and so the electoral system is important, that is critical, that the President and the National Assembly should also give the same speedy consideration to the process of amending the Electoral Act.
And while
when we have a credible electoral process, then the people can hold their governors, their senators, the House of Rep members, and the Assembly members accountable, including their local government chairmen.
While we have that in the works, because there's been a plug, they pulled the plug on that one for now. While we're waiting for that to be done and pushing for it, why are we just putting everything at the table of Mr. President? And I'm not in any way, again, absolving Mr. President of his stake in this. But why are you not taking this grouse to your governors? I'm asking the question and I asked earlier on. Why are the Niger Delta people not occupying their government houses? Because those are the people who are directly their government, before you talk about the federal government. If there is pressure on governors, don't you think that there will be hit on Mr. President?
The governors, we believe, are doing their best.
Are they?
I
thought you said you don't want to speak
Marianne, please
I thought you said you don't want to speak on behalf of the governors.
No, but I live in Rivers State. I travel almost every week from Bayelsa, Delta, Akwa Ibom to Benin, almost every week. I'm in one state or the other. And I know the challenges we face as a people. I know the difficult terrains that we have. I don't want to begin to talk about the cost for constructing good roads in the Niger Delta. But the constitution of this country makes the president of Nigeria like the God of Nigeria. We will keep saying this. It's like a God of Nigeria. If he wakes up this morning and he says this is what he wants, it can be done. He woke up one morning and through a presidential fiat created something for gold miners in Zamfara. That's the president of Nigeria. That's the power that the Constitution has given to the president of this country. So the ball stops at his table.
Well, finally, going forward, as the 3% has become, law, and now we have the Minister of State for Petroleum, who's going to be sitting over that committee that has 12 months to implement all of the things that have been stated in that act, which has become law. Is there some hope of change in the way that things are being run, especially with the NNPC, with the NDDC, and other offshoots of this particular PIA? Is there going to be, because again, I want to say this energy that we have now, that the anger and the feeling that we have been deceived or we have been deprived of something, can we put it to see that this act is followed through to the latter? Is this something that PANDEF can take upon itself?
PANDEF is interested in how our communities and our people will benefit from this process. And we have studied the act, now an act. We studied the bill and all the versions of the bill. We have studied the act now, and it is geared towards profit maximization for the federal government of Nigeria and the IOCs, to complete neglect of the people of the Niger Delta. Let us restate that unless the people of the Niger Delta, in whose backyards this industry is operated, are given adequate participation in the management and operations of the industry, we may not have peace in the Niger Delta as expected. That's the fact.
Well, I want to say thank you very much. Mr. Ken Robinson is of PANDEF, and he seems to be very unhappy. But let's hope that the government hears, the anger in your voice, and then maybe, like they said, they're open to amendments, and maybe you have an avenue to take your grouse to the federal government.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for being here. Well, we'll take a short break, and when we return, Governor Aminu Masari has given his citizens the go-ahead to acquire weapons and defend themselves against bandits. Is this where we are now? Well, we'll talk about it after the break.
Hello and welcome. It's Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime. Nimasa This Week is brought to you by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Statutorily mandated to ensure that there is regulation and promotion of matters affecting our waters. NIMASA bears responsibility for search and rescue, shipping development, and ship registration.
NIMASA This Week, the voice of maritime, showing on this channel.
Nigeria's Niger Delta region, from where the black gold fuels Africa's largest economy, where the lines between wealth and poverty has never been thinner. Conflicts, poverty, insecurity, and environmental challenges daily confront the region. How can the Niger Delta story be changed for the better?
Join Mamode Akuga at 9 p.m. every Friday evening on PlusTvAfrica as he probes deep in search of solutions.
Inside the Niger Delta with Mamode Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
It's only in Nigeria where special needs kids are not good in arithmetic.
If your lecturer teaches you something in a certain way, and then you find another way of explaining it, you might be penalized for not even putting in that word for word.
And what drives me crazy the most is when you see Loma officials, these ladies in orange suits on the roads, in Lagos roads in particular, sweeping the roads, are now sweeping the sand into the gutter. I mean, were they not trained before they got that job?
It's the adoption of strange laws that we have come and put and twisted religion into it for me that is causing the problem.
There's a lot of change that can be created because half of the children today are homeschooling anyway. Yeah. So can we actually take advantage of what we're having on ground and change the narrative?
It's now you want me to Japan. Are you okay? I didn't go since. It's now you want me to leave? No, because it's about to get better.
Frustrated by the unceasing reign of terror and banditry in his state, the Katsina State Governor Aminu Bello Masari has officially approved a resort to self-help and has asked his people to acquire weapons in defense against terror and banditry. Meanwhile, in June, Sani Umar, a resident of Bastari local government area of Katsina State, spoke on how Nigeria's porous borders with Niger fuels attacks in the northwest. Well, joining us to discuss this is retired Air Vice Marshal Femi Gbadebo. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm just going to go straight off the cuff. A governor is asking his people, out of frustration, obviously, to resort to self-help in a country where we have the army, we have the Air Force, we have the Navy, we have police, we have, we have so many security outfits, and the governor of that state is saying, well, because we're unable to deal with this situation, or our security agents are not able to deal with this situation, maybe we all have to arm ourselves. And the last time I checked, it is illegal to have own a weapon or a gun in Nigeria if it's not licensed, and it's hardly easy for you to do that. So please help me out. What exactly do you think is going on here?
I think unfortunately, some of our leaders have shot themselves in the foot. And there seems to be a lack of coordination in the utterances that are coming from major state actors. So you find one governor saying something, the police is saying another thing. We see in some states where the police is working hard to mop up what they call illegal weapons. Even regional security organizations that have been set up are yet to be officially allowed to carry weapons. And then nobody is officially selling weapons. I mean, I don't know anywhere where you can go outright and just buy your own weapons. So I know the situation is really getting out of hand. And that utterance from Dr. Masari, who we know about a year or so ago was visibly seen to be romancing with the bandits or insurgents, is another of these complicated cries and calls that we're getting from our leaders. They need to come together and discuss these issues and have a clear directive from the federal government, which will affect the police, and then let us know exactly what the people can do. You cannot call people to take up arms and defend themselves and then have the police come next week and start arresting people because they have illegal weapons.
I'm really curious because this is the president's state, obviously. This is his backyard, literally. But like you have said, the governors, including Governors Zulum, all of the governors in the states that are facing this insecurity, we get mixed messages from them. But the governors are #1 chief security officers in their states, whether it's on paper or not. They are.
Exactly.
Why do they have to go to the federal government for a directive? They know what is happening. It's he who wears the shoe that understands how bad the pinch is or the pain is. Why resort to the federal government? Does this also mean that there's lack of leadership in these states, that they have to go to the federal government, who may not have the slightest idea what they're going through?
Well, the idea that the governor as the chief security officer is something that can sometimes be laughable because they have no control over the commissioner of police or the other security assets that are in their state. They still have to liaise. For instance, if a governor needs like the brigade commander or some other person to come out and help out, the law still says that the first point of refusal is the commissioner of police, who has to say that, sir, I am overwhelmed, I need the military. And when the governor, even though they have a state security council, when the governor calls the military has to go through the back door and get a clearance from his service chief and so on. Even though there is another way that the governor can get to Mr. President, and Mr. President can direct the service chief to go ahead and give the go-ahead. You understand? So yes, there are what on paper may look cumbersome, but with a finely working mechanism, it can be just a phone call away. The only problem we're seeing here is that when a governor gives this kind of directive, we need to be sure of the response that is coming from the superior to either the commissioner of police or the security agencies that are in that state. And I think the governors should stop just going to the press and making statements like this. They should get the very clear mandate from the presidency. He should go to, I mean, I don't know, are they trying to give us the impression that they cannot be Mr. President? Because that's the first point of call. And then the next thing should be federal government giving a new directive on the use of personal arms and how the registrations and the licensing can be done. Then at the various state levels, we will begin to have people who have license to sell weapons, and they will import them. Yes, you can limit the caliber of the weapons that they're getting.
I mean, I get where this conversation is going, but I'm trying to understand why we have to resort to now introducing weapons into our system, because we really, already we have so many weapons that are illegal, that are in the system that we can't even account for. And now we want to go to a legal way of, really, does this not make our security outfits or our security agencies look bad? Does this not also send a message to the so-called bandits that we are extremely overwhelmed and we are running out of ideas? I ask this because because early this year we remember a service chief who told, well, it wasn't a service chief, it was the Minister of I think the
Minister of Defense.
Defense that said that we should defend ourselves. So if this is coming from people who are in the federal government, when we say the federal government, it's not just Mr. President, why are we still having to want to speak to the president if someone in his cabinet is also saying we should go resort to self-help?
Well, resort to self-help doesn't mean that everybody should jump out of the streets and just shooting away. But you see, it still beats my imagination where a community will continue to be ravaged and they'll go to sleep at night and waiting for some miracles to happen. Every group of body, there is what you call neighborhood watch. There are vigilantes, there are organized private security networks. Working with these people will gather intelligence. You see, one of the school children, a set of school children that were kidnapped in Katsina, when the whole thing was sorted out, it was revealed that these individuals had to go to markets to buy foodstuff for the children because there were about 300 or so. And so definitely within the market, it was noticed that somebody was buying large quantities of certain things. And from there, intelligence started to pull up, and that's how the whole thing got unraveled. And so the thing is that our people in the villages, in the rural communities, they are not doing what they should do. You cannot have even 100 men in the bush and they'll be surviving without foodstuff, some basic amenities. There's very little they can get off the land. In fact, from history, I know that there used to be some women in some communities that used to cook for these bandits and terrorists who are staying out in the forest. And so it's a question of intelligence gathering, in the question of everybody knowing that they are part of the security network and they can pass information and building a system when it's done. But the other one I'm talking about is that in communities, they must also build up their own security network where there's a group of people who are staying awake at night, even in shifts, so that you don't keep having this situation where they seem to come out of nowhere, and then people are sleeping and they start vandalizing and burning houses and so on. We must wake up. And this is part of what the governors are saying when they say defend yourself, organize yourself, and prepare to face these individuals who are coming.
Let's talk about the porousness of our borders, because there is a man who gave his story about how he and his community was attacked in the same Katsina state. And he also pointed out that these porous borders between Katsina, Katsina and Niger, is what fuels more of this banditry, because that's where these people are coming in and out of. And it really takes my mind to the fact that there are also people who are surrendering to the army and saying that they are repentant Boko Haram members. How do we know that these people are not the guys who are coming in through Niger and claiming to be Nigerians? I've asked this question over and over again. What is the modus operandi? How are these people being debriefed? Because if we are getting these many people surrender and we're still unable to deal with those who are in the forest, then maybe we're missing something, are we?
Oh, yes, we're missing something. The idea of them being debriefed and so on, it is too fast. Under normal circumstances, they should be held in some safe area, reasonably distant from the a crisis area. I noticed, for instance, Governor Zulum in a quagmire now trying to figure out how to handle the issue of the repentant Boko Haram people. It's not supposed to be the governor's problem. It's a federal issue, and it's a national security issue. And so it's not for him to be trying to figure out how to settle them. It is for a government agency to take responsibility for these people, take them somewhere. Because like you said, there could be people there who are coming undercover to lie low and to begin to work as double agents or spies. And when the time is right, they just join their colleagues who are coming to create havoc in our lands. As far as the borders are concerned, our borders will continue to be porous because of one simple thing. When the white man sat down in Berlin in the 1800s and decided to share Africa, and just draw borders, more or less straight lines or whatever they did, they failed to take cognizance of ethnic groups. So you have ethnic groups that are on both sides of the border. If you go to certain parts of the north, and I know a particular town in Adamawa State, where the border runs right through the middle of the village. So one side of the village is Niger, the other side of the village is Nigeria, and so on. And that's what happens in most of our border areas. So these are relations, these are people. I mean, even when you talk about 5 kilometers apart, they are the same people who interact together, they farm together and so on. So when you even talk about bandits or terrorists, cross-border terrorists, I tell you, when you get some of them, all you can see is that because they're from a French-speaking country, they don't speak English, but they probably speak the native language, and they have the same facial features as our own people. So how do you easily differentiate A from B? The only thing that is that when you see those terrorists that are from Niger and Chad, particularly the ones from Chad, they're very hostile, because they've been living in, in a very hostile environment for a long time. And then there's something, you see, when you talk of Nigerian troops dealing with people in cross-border areas, it is difficult for you to deal roughly with people who look like you and know. I've told people before, when Nigerian troops go to peacekeeping missions far away from Nigeria, they're very effective. because it is clear that you can differentiate one group from another. But when you are in the Nigerian border area and you are having to deal with people who look like your people and who speak native languages and so on and so forth, it can be, in fact, some of them look like people who are in uniform with you. And that's where we even have some problems, that some of our troops may be having sympathies. Because when you see somebody who speaks your language, it's difficult to now treat them like enemy.
But is your training not to deal with the enemy, no matter what he looks like, especially if that enemy that looks like you is killing your people? Should we be even having that conversation?
Well, you see, what I'm talking about, enemy here.
I mean, I've never been to war, so I probably don't understand, but please help me understand.
When he's killing your people, or when you catch him red-handed, he's the enemy. When he takes off his clothes, like all those people who are in Borno State now say, we are sorry or not. Look at those pictures. Do you see any enemy there? That is the problem that we're having to deal with. And, you know, there's a lot of psychological problems. There are a lot of issues. So like I said, the simplest thing is to take them on their word, but remove them from that crisis area and then do what we call proper profiling. It is after you've done the profiling, you can determine who is who and stuff like that. But definitely there's no, I mean, if you have a lion and you pick a baby lion or a tiger from the forest and bring it up with your dogs at home, it's going to be friendly up to when it is big and so on. Because you are giving it cooked food and you are treating it in a certain way. But honestly, the day that lion or tiger tastes blood, you will suddenly see a change in them. And that is the truth with human beings. Ask people who have been to Liberia, all these boy soldiers and everything. It's difficult to rehabilitate these people because they've been through some psychological mess up that they can be calm for a few days, but that just in a bus or in a motor park, a little fracas break up, and then you'll see a tiger coming out of a human being. So
does this mean that we're wasting taxpayers' money trying to rehabilitate these people? Because I always point to the fact that we did have some form of amnesty thing for the former sets of Boko Haram members who said that they had, surrendered. But we also heard from the army that these same people took back information, they became informants and went back to join Boko Haram. So this also goes to buttress what you're saying. So should we not waste our monies in trying to rehabilitate these people? Should they be facing judgment? Because we also have to take into consideration that fellow soldiers have been killed. People who are living in those communities have been victims of these same people. The girl that returned with her 2 children and one of the men who said he's her husband has obviously been, she has been subjected to abuse and God knows what happened to her. Now she's been made a wife and a mother. Shouldn't these people be facing justice, or rather facing the law, so that the people who have been victims can get justice, including our soldiers who have fallen in battle?
You see, we have family members, wives, children, parents whose children have died in this crisis. We have communities that have lost their people, and not just being shot, but who have been dealt with badly. I remember one of our Air Force pilots was beheaded and they carried his head in one of the videos. How do you expect these people to feel when you say that you're forgiving? Nobody has a right to forgive people who have done something like this. We talk about amnesty. We talk about, even you hear about Black Lives Matter and people are still talking about, things being made right, okay? Psychologically, when a people are destroyed or damaged, it takes years to get them back. And that's why I'm saying that what Governor Zulum is doing, it should not be his business. It's a Nigerian business because some of the soldiers who died are from different parts of Nigeria. So it's not just about talking to communities there, whether we're ready to take them back. And I don't know if anybody's thinking about it, but the psychological damage that it's going to do to the troops that are out there that are still fighting is something that we cannot afford, to let happen to us going forward. So there is a problem. There are ways, just as we are able to take, refugees and put them in all these camps, we must take these individuals and remove them from that area and then profile them to even see how much involvement they had. That's why the International Criminal Court is there. We see what's been happening even to from presidents in Africa. Charles Taylor went through a long period of, trial and so on, because those things cannot just be reasoned away. We see when justice is being done, it must be seen to be done. It must be seen to be done fairly to all concerned. Yes, you are sorry. But what does that do for me? And then you are talking about, you are trying to rehabilitate them. Have you rehabilitated the families that have been messed up? Have you paid appropriate compensations to them? This thing has to go both ways for us to get out of this mess. We know clearly that Nigerian troops, the soldiers that I worked with and those that I trained, given the right tools, it's not just buying new aircrafts and so on, but it also includes giving them the powers to do. A commander in the field is responsible for the actions to take. When orders come from behind to change the game, it's very confusing, okay? And so at the end of the day, we must understand what we're doing, and we must do it and be seen to be doing it fairly, everywhere, from left to right and so on. If you remember, in the first maybe major part of the Boko Haram crisis, the Northwest was peaceful. Northwest was not affected. When they first started having problems, it was cattle rustling. Mm-hmm. But it quickly turned into something else. Now we are seeing kidnapping, and people think it's a simple thing. But that's part of why the Naira has been messed up, because like, I think it is former Senator for Life, Sani, who said, every time you capture this terrorists and so on, they don't look like people who have handled $1 million Naira in their lives. Yes, they collected 300-400 million Naira. Where does it go? It goes to Bureau de Change. And so some people, powerful players, central banks say they'll name these people. From time to time, some top government officials say they'll name the people who are behind all these things. Why are we keeping quiet? Why are we hiding it? The truth, I'll tell you.
You just played to my last question, because I was going to ask that, have we maybe over-politicized this issue, and that's why the insurgency is seemingly growing in its leaps and bounds and now has different names, unknown gunmen, bandits, and even Boko Haram that has been there for over a decade? Absolutely. You see, 2023, any politician who says 2023 is not yet an issue, he should go and tell it to his grandmother. People are stashing money because the only politics that our politicians understand is temporary use of money to confuse the masses, get the votes, and get back on track. So if you have, let's say, even $100,000 now, and you keep it at the rate they are messing the dollar up, you are going to get a lot of Naira to use to play around when the time comes. So certain things are going wrong, and we need to understand it, and we need to get to the bottom of these things. And so politics has no business in war. They tell you that when politicians go to war, it's young, innocent men and innocent civilians that die. And at the end of the day, you can see what's happening in certain parts of the world right now. Wow. So people also have to begin to rise up and complain and protest, and not just wait for their politicians to do the right thing. When the pressure is on, politicians will wake up. All right. But when people continue to sit down and wait quietly, it's not going to change. Well, and the day our soldiers decide to just lose confidence in themselves, it will be very sad for this country. Well, we pray that it doesn't get to that point. Retired Air Vice Marshal Femi Gbadebo, thank you very much for speaking with us. We appreciate it. Thank you for having me. All right. Well, that's it on Plus Politics. As we end on that very sour note, I'll see you tomorrow when we talk more on Nigeria's politics. I am Mary Anacone. Have a good evening.